First, the end is nigh for an old Canberra landmark, McGregor Hall. Officialdom calls it a rundown safety risk, standing in the way of a modern city. Those who use it see a valuable historic and community asset. The 60-year-old McGregor Hall was closed last week due to asbestos. It's scheduled to be demolished soon to make way for the next stage of the ANU Exchange development.
A lot of people wouldn't know what's here, but I think if they came past and saw some of the community groups and some of the usage that the hall has and what's going on inside, I think they'd be pleasantly surprised. For us, yeah, it's a bit daggy, but that's what makes it so great. And it's got a lot of great memories, so we would be very, very sad to see it go. It really feels like home for us.
McGregor Hall is this little hall bubbling away with life and vitality on the edge of the city centre. It's not a concrete construction, it's not sort of a little box that's sort of been made to, accommodate community groups. It's something that has evolved over time. You kind of get this feel almost that there's a bit of life here.
Life support may be more appropriate. Home of the Canberra Pensioners Club for many years, McGregor Hall has been used more recently by community groups like the Canberra Musicians Club and the Jumptown Swing Dancers. The day after Stateline filmed this session, the hall was locked up.
The fact that it's been raised now, as opposed to last week or last month, I think is incidental. It's part of the process that we've undertaken. I don't think there are any conspiracy theories about whether or not you should allow public access to areas that have deteriorating asbestos.
David Lamont is the director of the office of the ANU Exchange. What has the ANU Exchange done for this part of Sydney?
The overarching tenet of the master plan that was developed in 2004 and 5 was to integrate the activities of the university into the activities of the city in a vibrant hub.
The next stage of the $700 million development will house several thousand students, but will leave some existing users out in the cold.
I think I have some sympathy for a number of them, and we have assisted and attempted to assist as good corporate citizens to find alternate venues, both short-term and long-term, particularly the Canberra Musicians Group, who have acknowledged in writing to the ANU Exchange that they were aware 5 or 6 months ago that they started to use this venue, that the venue would in fact be demolished and would go.
When people come here, almost unanimously people will say at the end of the gig, this place has got to be saved.
It's not for me to ascribe reasons why some of them are doing what they're doing. I think there are a number of other agendas that aren't necessarily related solely to McGregor Hall.
This is an aerial photograph of the area around Civic in 1955. And it shows the Turner Workmen's Hostel in somewhat splendid isolation between the Melbourne buildings and Civic. It's a very different picture to what we have today.
Alan Foskett has published several books on Canberra's hostel period.
Well, Chris, this is a remnant of what was called the Turner Workmen's Hostel. And the Turner Workmen's Hostel was built in 1949 as part of a great move in Canberra to entice building workers to come to Canberra to help kickstart the city after the Second World War.
Almost 3,000 men lived in 7 hostels across Canberra. 260 of them were housed in McGregor Hall, enduring winters in tiny rooms with no heating.
I, as a historian and that, would feel it is important to have some recognition of the fact that it is, a final remnant of an important part of our urban history.
History that's repeating. Just like the 1950s, Canberra is in the midst of another development boom. This one has an inevitable impact on the remnants of the old city.
The community is, I think, now realising that so much of it is disappearing that it's become a real significant issue.
Is the battle lost for McGregor Hall?
I don't think the battle's lost. The building's still standing. While it's still standing, I think there's still hope. Having it appraised and considered and assessed as having heritage value is probably the only thing that will save it.
A nomination has been lodged with the ACT Heritage Council. The council inspected the hall recently and a recommendation is expected this month. Pip Giovanelli prepared the heritage application.
Chris, this is the side of the building that faces Barry Drive, and it's on the corner of Marcus Clark Street, so it's the public face of the building, if you like. It's the one that everyone's going to see when they're driving down Barry Drive and into the city. It's, if you like, it's the entrance into the city on the gateway there. And what's interesting about this particular elevation is that it has very, very high integrity. And by that I mean that it's still very similar to what it was like when it was first built. Each of the windows, the timber frame windows, were relating to each of the little bedrooms that were occupied at the time.
The original agreement was quite clear that McGregor Hall was always to be demolished to make way for further development. I don't think that there's been anybody that's suggested in any part of our consultation that it should have been retained. And so the move to heritage listed and so on is quite a new phenomenon.
It's the only building of this, if you like, scale, form and function still surviving within the civic precinct. Everything else has been knocked down, pushed over, replaced by a high-rise office building.
Barring a heritage reprieve, this ugly duckling of the Canberra cultural scene faces demolition. The ACT government says there are other similar venues groups can use, but the dancers and musicians say none can match the location, cost and community amenity.
The building does look a bit tatty at the moment because it hasn't been maintained very well for quite some period of time. As I say, the actual scale and form of this building is very good. This building would respond really well to a bit of architectural TLC. It would come up and be a delightful little icon.
I believe that in fact what's being replaced here is more significant than what was here.
Grass growing in the gutters can be cleaned out. A few cracked walls can be patched and mended. But what you can't fix if you knock this place down is what it is and what it reminds us of it.